I'm ready.
Today is the 16th of June, 2018. My name is Everett Fly, and we're in San Antonio, Texas, and we are recording an oral interview for the San Antonio African American Community Archive and Museum. We have two guests this morning, and I'm going to let each one of them introduce themselves. So please tell us your name first, middle, and maiden if appropriate, and last name.
Okay. My name is Jana Lee. Gilly is my maiden name. Friesenhahn is my married name. I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, and I am 46 years old.
And the year you were born?
1972.
Thanks.
I'm Michael Paul Friesenhahn. I was born in San Antonio, raised in Floresville. I was born July 28, 1970.
Very good. And both of you have extensive family histories in Bexar and Atascosa counties, is that correct?
Yes. We actually found out with my husband, he has a lot of New Braunfels and with the German population also. So it's a lot of it is in Texas. So, and close to Texas, San Antonio, Atascosa, Wilson, and then some in Selma and New Braunfels.
And Janet, can you tell me what do you do for a living?
I am a nurse practitioner.
And Mike?
I'm a stay-at-home dad that doesn't stay at home.
He's a rancher.
He's a rancher. That's what I wanted.
Yes.
Because we're in Texas, and that's important.
Yes.
So how did you begin to research your family history?
Well, I started researching last November. My dad had passed, and he had always told us, oh yeah, I did some family history, and it's all in these boxes, and life would happen and stuff would happen. But when we started cleaning out all the stuff that was in there, he had a whole box of folders organized pretty, it was great how he organized it. So he did extensively on his sides of the family, and he also did some of my mom's. So that's when I started really digging into it. And I wanted to do a DNA test for 5-6 years. I just never did it. And so when my mom passed, right after my mom passed, 1.5 years before, he said, Jana, you are either of African descent or you're Indian descent. I can't figure out which one it is, American Indian. I said, okay. So so that's when I wanted to do a DNA test, and that's exactly when I started. So it was last year, November.
Can you give us an idea of a few of the things that might have been in the box that he shared?
Yes, there was folders. He did extensively, and my main name is Gilly. He did extensively on the Gilly side. And we're kind of stuck in Georgia. My aunt is actually hiring a genealogist to kind of figure out exactly where it originated from.
The state of Georgia? Yes,
the state of Georgia. So we can't figure out if there was a fire or something there with his genealogy. Now, with that, we kind of, he did his own chart before. And what he did is when he got a computer, he was emailing people and kind of going through his genealogy. So I also found something on my mom, which he organized it as Knuckles Pre-Shields Hooker. So he had already information in here, and I actually added some information.
Good, great.
He actually had some information as far as who he emailed, who he talked to, information on that.
Was there anything in particular in those folders that caught your eye?
Yes, he did have a picture, and I blew it up, of my third great grandmother. This is Missouri Shields Hooker. Her first husband was named Hooker, and this is William Priest. So when I look at this picture, you think, oh, this is before I do the DNA test. You think Indian, you have that. Or he's like, oh, it could be really anything. So that's when I did my DNA test. So the DNA test showed 2% Senegal, which is West Africa. I did not have any Native American. So I figured out when you knew your DNA test, it washes out through the years. So that's how I found out. That was very interesting.
And so what was the next piece that from that photograph, where did you go and what steps did you take?
So when I did the DNA test, and I don't have any financial with Ancestry, I was researching DNA tests, and Ancestry was just the most people that were tested. So I said, well, I'll start with that one. And when you do Ancestry, you can actually message cousins or message people on there to kind of give you some clues. And of course, I bought a subscription to Ancestry where you can kind of go, it has the hints, and you can kind of go and see what's next. So when I Ancestry, the couple of priest cousins, they said, well, this is a thing. Our fourth great grandmother was a slave. And Missouri, which is she is the daughter. So that was very interesting. So I said, oh, okay. Never knew that in my family. That's kind of interesting to know. So that's what kind of brought me here. So when you go through that, you kind of find out and you message some more people. Okay, well, how can I get some more information on this? So there was a book that Mamie Ballard actually drew up. She is actually a fourth or fifth cousin. And she did this whole book on Positos Oakley, which showed that William Priest was a landowner, had slaves in Alabama. I think he's originally from North Carolina. But what happened is that he had children, at least 8 children that I know about. And they were raised as free. I think the neighbors kind of had a lot of heat because he was doing this and because they were raised in free. And I can just imagine, in the 1800s, what was going on as far as slavery. And that was definitely not what to do. And so I think he was having a lot of heat from everyone. So then he moved to Texas. So what I can figure out is he moved to Polk, Texas for a while, bought some land. He moved to Bexar County. And then he actually moved him and all of his children to Mexico. Now, while this was happening, these children were getting married, and he finally settled in South Central Bexar County with all of his children.
Did you do any research? You showed the
Yes.
front of the book about the land. Did you do any research on where they lived?
Yes, they lived in South Bexar County, not closer to Atascosa County off of 37. And the other interesting thing that I found out is that Priest Road off of 37 is actually named after William Priest, which is right here. I do also have another picture as they're older. This is William Priest in Missouri. And they're a little older.
And you don't have an idea of when those photographs were?
When I spoke with, I did speak with some people. I started calling Bexar County death and birth records, and they actually came in contact. They said, well, we don't have this person, Dr. Carlson, who's doing research, and he would know a lot more. So he actually looked at the first picture and said, well, because I know William and Missouri got married in Mexico, Matamoros, Mexico, from we can, there are certain things that about in 1863. So he thinks this is actually a picture from Mexico. This is their wedding picture.
I see.
That's what he thinks. So I don't know if there's a connection as far as William Priest and the Shields. So what happened with William Shields too is that he actually made his children free. And this took the act of Congress in Perry, Alabama, that I did my research. So it was very interesting to find out, and as more I talk to people, how rare that is, that he was a slave owner. He had children with a slave, but he gave them their name and he took care of them. And he wanted them free. So that was very interesting to find out.
And so you're still working on that connection between the Shields and the priests, is that correct?
Yes, the Shields, William Shields is Missouri's father. William Bryant Shields is Missouri's father. I'm guess they got married, and to all not persons of color. And there is stories that saying, okay, you need to marry into persons that are white, because he was I'm pretty sure he was very afraid of what was going to happen. No one was going to happen then. You know, we didn't know how long slavery was going to last or what was going to happen. And in Texas at the time, in the 1850s, 60s, you know, that was right after the Republic of Texas. And Mexico, I know, had banned slavery. So that's probably why they skipped to Matamoros, Mexico also. So I know the connection there. I don't know if he knew, I think he knew William, maybe the priest as far as land, you know, how they knew each other, but it was good to find that out. So I know they settled in Bexar County. That was the South Bexar County where they settled.
You mentioned your search in the death and birth records.
Yes.
Have you been able to determine where different members of your family are buried?
Yes, a lot of them are buried there are some that are buried in the cemeteries surrounding that area. There is, William Bryant Priest is buried at Mission Park off of the Southwest Military.
Yes.
Yeah. He lived till he was 80. Missouri sisters and brothers I found 2 or 3 of them at Oakley Cemetery, which is right off of Hardy and 37. I found them. There are her children that are buried in Lori Cemetery, and that's sort of in Wilson County, Bexar County area. But I found my main thing is I can't find Missouri. I can't find Missouri priest where she was buried. So when my thought was to contact the birth and death records, because I knew everyone needed a death certificate. I think it was after 1900. So I said, well, I'll try to get her death certificate. Well, I waited a long time, and there was no death certificate for a Missouri priest. There was a death certificate for Walpole Nockels, which is Missouri's priest's son-in-law. And that is my second great-grandfather. I found his death certificate, but I can't find his wife's, Abigail Priest, which is my second great-grandmother's death certificate also. So that's kind of where we're at. I know Walpole was somehow in Lemming. So Lemming is kind of a community that is Bexar County, Atascosa, right, in that sort of area. But I don't know what they called certain counties. As you look at Ancestry and as you look at the records, you know, different land changes and certain communities change. So that's kind of interesting to find out also.
What did you find out about Walpole?
Walpole was very interesting. So I have a picture of them. This is Walpole Nockels. This is Missouri and William Shields' daughter, Abigail Priest. This is Walpole Nockels. So these are my second great-grandparents. And when you look at the census records, it shows M for mulatto, which is a mixed race.
Yes.
Which I never knew about. And then you show on the census records there are B for black and there are W for white, all in that area. So that was very interesting. So you knew everyone was kind of close, and you know this was a community happening at that time. So the little boy right here is my great grandfather. He is Stephen Nockels. Walpole was very interesting. Walpole came to the United States from New York, and when he was 19 years old, and we found him in San Antonio and in Texas a few years later. He is from Yarmouth, England. So that is a coastal town. And him and his brother came to America. I'm not quite sure. His brother had a lot of military history, but he kind of settled in with Abby in this area. You found articles on him that he was agricultural. He wrote, he farmed, he had, he was the first postmaster in Oakley. And he also did census taking. So when he did census taking, he would actually put white for everyone. And so I'm thinking they were kind of hiding different things. So he knew what was going on. But it's very interesting to find out, okay, you've got this other person from England, first generation coming here. We think for the land, or we think for opportunity. That's my next kind of goals later on. And he marries Abigail Priest. They have 10 children that I know about. So when this was happening, and this is my great grandfather, he died before, I want to go back for Walpole. So Walpole,
Yes, sure.
he had,
I'm sorry, let me,
okay.
if we make a break right there, I'm going to stop my tape and then we'll pick it back up again. This tape has like a 15-minute limit on it.
So you want us to come back to that?
Yeah. So
Okay.
And also, just watch out for that microphone when you're moving documents, because you're sometimes you have
I hit it.
sponsors, commercial sponsors. We're going out to
No.
a sponsor.
Public service announcement.
HF Ranch.
Okay, I'm gonna do my claps again. Okay, and I'm ready.
We were talking about Walpole and
Yes.
your background research on him, Walpole Nockels.
Yes, Walpole Nockels, originally from England, came here to Texas, farmed, and was taking care of his family. I found a couple articles and a couple articles that you found. He would write into this agricultural magazine, and when he would write it in, my husband actually, he would get it for free. So he wrote in, and it was very cute, talking about his family and how this magazine helped him and how the land was, because it was sand. So for him to grow certain agricultural in sand was, I think, very challenging for him. But through these magazines, these agricultural magazine gave him hints and how to do it. And he did say, it was very cute, he sounded very educated, and he did talk about Abigail, my better half. So that was really sweet to find out. So that was also very interesting.
You mentioned that Walpole, in a few occasions, was a census taker.
Yes.
Do you know which years?
Yes, I do have them. I think I don't know the specific years. But they both passed very suddenly too, within weeks of each other in 1917, January. And this is when my great-grandfather was 20 years old. So they both passed, and I don't know, on his death certificate says pulmonary tuberculosis. However, two of the children passed within a year, so I'm guessing Spanish flu at the time was very rampant, and for them both to pass pretty closely was, sad.
And do you know where Walpole is buried?
No. That's the other thing. I'm missing Missouri, I'm missing Walpole, and his wife Abigail, my second great grandparents, and I'm missing two of their children that died young. So when we did research, there is also a Joe Roberts that does a lot of the Find a Grave. She is related to me. Her direct relation is Coleman Knockold, which is Walpole's brother. So there are stories and everything that there is a priest cemetery. I cannot find a priest cemetery. There's lots of family rumors, and still trying to find that. And that's my main goal, is to find them. And messaging a lot, you know, Missouri had 17 children. She had children from 2 marriages, and I message people on Ancestry, and no one really knows where she is. They just said she's buried in Priest Cemetery. But I'm thinking, since we didn't know a lot of this secret was kept secret for at least 2 generations, that we are a mixed race. So when I find that out, you know, I'm sad about that, just because the way I was raised, I was never raised that way, and I do not raise my children. And so I felt that in this community, they really worked hard. I also found out that Missouri and William, they had a school on their property. So they were actually trying and making this community as best as they could.
And do you know anything about the school, or?
Yes, there are pictures of the school children in the school, and they don't know exactly what year this was. And I don't know who. I showed my cousins this because my cousins didn't know any. I think a great aunt knew we were of mixed race, but I don't know exactly who my great grandfather is or who it is in this picture. This was the Oakley School children, and if you look at this picture, it has all sorts of shades in there.
Yes, it does.
So, which was very interesting. Lots of shades in this picture.
I see. And so that school originated from property dedicated by your family?
Yes, by my 3rd great-grandparents, Missouri and William Priest.
Excellent. Excellent. And you were telling me in your search for the different cemeteries that there was kind of an oral history about the impact of the construction of Interstate 37 and what one relative might have done to try to protect some of the headstones.
Yes, it's very interesting. They're all related, and Missouri and William sold the property to a Brown. Brown are related to us, and there was an elderly person that had a family reunion, and they were at another cemetery, the Oakley Cemetery, and she was telling her son, well, her aunt was buried, that's Missouri, was buried, like she would just point to where I-37 was. And we heard that, well, she was saying that someone must have moved the gravestones. The rumor is they moved the gravestones and they built 37. So with family stories, you kind of have to research it. You hear a lot of family stories. When you're doing ancestry and when you're doing family stories, you can kind of tell maybe this is a family story or maybe this is just what she heard, but that is a story, you know, we're following up on that, and you're helping with that too.
Sure. Okay, let me balance this out a little bit. I'll give you a break. You mentioned at the beginning, and Mike mentioned about the Friesenhahn family legacy in surrounding counties. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask Mike if you can, as we've been researching with you, Mike mentioned, or you might have mentioned, that his grandmother had been one of the keepers of the history of the family. Mike, can you tell us about your grandmother? And
Evidently, my grandfather, grandfather passed away from, what was it?
Double pneumonia. He had pneumonia a couple times.
And
what was his name?
his Paul Friesenhahn. He was in the army or military, and came back from Germany evidently and was very sick, and he passed away. And from what we gather, my grandmother sold all their property somewhere up in Selma. I'm not quite sure exactly where it was. And after selling the property, they moved to a community between Floresville and Pleasanton, which is called Black Hill. And that's where they continued on with their farming and ranching at that time.
And what was your grandmother's first name? Do you remember?
Tekla Friesenhahn.
And so then they continued, but she kept the history of the family in farming and ranching. Or?
Yes. Evidently, they did the same up in Selma. My uncle said it was where Randolph Field. That's where their property was. I don't know that from there's rural routes. That's all you can find, and finding out where those were is pretty tough.
We may have some help for you on that. Dr. Crossan has a file, old county road records. But and so was the family again mostly in ranching, or was it a kind of a balance between farming and ranching?
Oh, I think back then it was more farming than ranching. They kept a cow or two around for milk or whatever. But it's kind of changed now, I guess, through the environment. Doesn't rain like it used to. The farming is kind of
Sure. And
tapered off. And you have irrigation.
You said that it might have been an uncle that had the recollection of where the land was. What was your uncle's name?
Henry Friesenhahn.
Okay.
Yeah, and they moved down with her family, which were the Cruzies. And I guess that's where the separation of the Friesenhahn and we've kind of separated from all the Friesenhahns that I know. When he passed away, he knew all of them, but
so that uncle has passed. I see.
Yes.
Okay, and do you know roughly when your grandmother passed?
We were married, I think.
98. I think 1998.
Good. Okay.
It was funny, we were doing, because my grandfather on my mom's side, you do your family history and you try to break it to, and I did his family tree. He won't do a DNA test yet. I break it down to, your mom's family, mother and father, and your dad's mother and father. So when we were doing it, my mom's father is full-blooded German also. It's Weber. So they immigrated to Waldeck, which is it's a German town in Fayette County, Texas. And Cruzies came first, I think, to Texas. And this was the big German migration into Texas. And his came, and then the Weber family came 7 years later, so it was like, this is interesting.
Right.
So it's kind of very interesting how, paths cross and families cross.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jana, you mentioned in an earlier part of your discussion about some goals you might have for your research, some things that you want to do, and ways to commemorate your family.
Yes, I feel this shouldn't be a secret. It shouldn't be a secret. It's who you are. It's why you're here. You can go through any family history and find out some good stuff and bad stuff all around, but this community was very special back in the time that I feel, and they were really trying. So my goal is to find Missouri where she is buried and where Walpole and Abigail are buried. That's the immediate goal. I know they're buried somewhere out there. That I do know. But again, from it being such a secret, because I would talk to my cousins and they're like, we didn't know. And if you look at their DNA test, you can compare them to yours. And the generation up, I am 2%, the generation up is 4%. So there's a progression on how your DNA test goes and what you are made of.
Are there those pictures are very striking.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any of the descendants that for some reason have struck a chord with you, or given you some interesting inspiration, or?
Well, it just, I'm interested in Missouri. She had all these children. She was trying very hard. There was, stories that's their favorite aunt, was Missouri, out of the family. So that was really interesting.
Did she have a nickname?
Yeah, she had a nickname. They called her Aunt Duty.
Aunt Duty.
Mm-hmm. They called her Aunt Duty. So it feels like she was very maternal and tried to take care of everyone. So for her to be dropped and no one, it's disheartening. So I want to definitely honor her and try to find her and maybe show people this is where she is and this was the community that was done. And I do have another article that was in the actually San Antonio paper that they did, and this was in 1882. This is the San Antonio Evening Light March, and it was basically telling them that they know about this colored people in southern part of the county, and it talks about they have visited and they know of the highly colored account of the correspondent of the Times, and it talks about they are very worthy people. These people spoken are of mixed bloods. They're the Goins. They talked about the people in the community, and they said, there's a mixture of Choctaw, Negro, white man. The Shields are quadroons. Now, quadroons was actually interesting to find out, because what quadroon I think means is 25% African. But I pretty sure William Shields was hiding. I don't find William Shields, the person that I don't find her on any census. Now, they also came with slaves, so I'm sure she was hiding in plain sight, but they all, there are accounts of all the children saying when my mom passed. So I know there was one. I know, I do want to find her also. So, but that would take, I do have, unfortunately, slave schedules from William Priest.
But do you know what was her name? Did she have a first name?
No, I do not know. It's not even mentioned anywhere.
So William Shields' wife is not mentioned in any records?
No, because he had a wife before.
I see.
That's that's another interesting part. He had a wife before, but he was having children with his slave. But again, they were raised free. They didn't know any other way. So in this article too, it kind of makes me feel a little proud that these people are undoubtedly good citizens, good circumstances. They're not entitled to be classed as colored anymore, the editor of the Times. So it kind of goes on that feeling, they're not to be classified as that because they are hardworking, the feelings in that time. And it said, who would feel very uncomfortably placed in a room with these people and a stranger allowed to pick out the colored from the white. So there was possibly a grand jury, possibly this was against the law. But I think they did this article, and hopefully things sort of died down as far as that. But I think I can't find anyone that are Indian. I don't know if that's a thing to say you're Indian rather than you're black.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay. Anything else that in your trove of information and discoveries that you want to show or share or?
Well, it's interesting with Mike's family. I think he's more English and German. I know he's 50% German for sure. On his dad was full-blooded German. On my side, there is German, English, actually found Jewish. I am kind of a mixture of a little bit of everything beside Native American and Asian, I think. So I find German, I find English mainly, and there is on my DNA test Scandinavian, 21%, which is very high percent. And so you never know where you came from. Science has told us now you can sort of tell where you came from as far as DNA testing. So that's great.
Good. Well, I want to thank you for sharing all that, and we're going to look forward to working with you some more, and we're going to try to find Missouri and Abigail and Walpole's grave.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.